How simple is it to assassinate a world billionaire? Just follow what this man did. First, rent a yacht and approach the billionaire's private island. If the boat captain might get in the way, deal with him first, then prop up his body to make it seem like he's still alive. When a patrolling drone spots the yacht, they'll just think it's an ordinary fishing vessel. And with the boat 2 miles from the shore, no one would think an assassin could successfully snipe in such unstable conditions. But Eddie not only has top-notch professional skills, he also has a custom-built sniper setup. Before the billionaire goes swimming, Eddie quickly fires 2 test shots to adjust the scope. Everything is set. Eddie then disguises himself as if he's fishing again. At this moment, Musk, guarded by his security team, arrives at the shore, which was his daily ritual. As the security team starts patrolling on jet skis, Eddie finishes getting his gear ready and sets his aim at Musk. Given the long distance, Eddie needs to factor in some prediction before taking the shot, awaiting the right moment. But just as Musk is exposed, Eddie's scope suddenly shifts. He hears the noise of approaching engines. The security team is coming to chase him away. He immediately takes out the security personnel, loads his gun and aims at the target again. But just then, a red dot appears on his radar. Another annoyance. A drone. Fortunately, Eddie is prepared. He activates his signal jammer, causing the drone to crash instantly. However, this action alerts Musk's security guards. With a loud shout, one of the guards dives to push Musk underwater as the quickest countermeasure against a sniper. But people still need to breathe, and Eddie calmly starts counting. Unfortunately, his prediction is slightly off, and the guard takes the bullet instead of Musk. But Eddie doesn't panic. As long as the target remains on the water's surface, he still has a chance. Musk dives underwater again, but smartly avoids surfacing at the same spot, swimming several meters away. Unfortunately, he couldn't outrun Eddie. Eddie successfully assassinated the world's richest man and quickly fled in his car. However, police in the area had already been tipped off and were conducting thorough vehicle inspections. Trapped between a stopped car ahead and a one behind, he decided to hide his weapon first before calmly stepping out and attempting to pass the inspection by pretending not to understand the language. Then, when the moment was right, he floored the gas pedal and sped off recklessly, undeterred by danger, and accelerated down the main road. Even when faced with police blockades, he smoothly evaded them without hesitation. With a perfect drift, he avoided the obstacles, escaping the encirclement successfully. Once free, Eddie planned to return to his home in Spain immediately. Unfortunately, trying to maneuver a boy who played across, his car swerved across. The fuel tank leaked, igniting a fire. A passing truck driver witnessed the incident, pulled over, and called for help. When Eddie regained consciousness, he signaled for assistance, and the kind driver forcefully pried open the deformed car door, rescuing him from the burning wreckage. The truck driver was about to notify a hospital, but when he saw Eddie take out his sniper rifle and heard the alarm from the phone behind him, he saved his own life by ducking. Eddie immediately pulled out another weapon and demanded the truck's keys. After learning they were inside, he seized the driver's phone and drove the truck away. It's unclear how far he drove, but he stopped at the edge of a steep cliff, applied some basic first aid on his wounds, changed into fresh clothes, started the truck engine, and pushed the vehicle off the cliff. By now, police had the entire area surrounded, making on-foot escape nearly impossible. Luckily, Eddie spotted an elderly couple nearby. He approached them, claiming he was severely ill, and begged them to drive him to the hospital. Out of compassion, the couple agreed to his request. Eddie then pulled out his handgun, threatening them to drive him 30 kilometers to the border. Terrified but complying, the elderly couple followed his orders. They finally reached the border. Unfortunately, security checks were extremely strict, so Eddie decided to bypass the checkpoint. He stopped at a forest trail nearby when the elderly man asked to step out for some fresh air. Eddie agreed. By comparison, the elderly woman seemed terrified, while her husband remained oddly calm. He asked Eddie if he would kill them both. Eddie firmly stated he wouldn't. The elderly man's words deeply moved Eddie, and tears welled up in his eyes, rendering him speechless. Back inside the vehicle, Eddie planned to spend the night in the RV. However, the elderly woman suddenly gathered unexpected courage, grabbed a small knife nearby, and stabbed Eddie in the back. Seeing Eddie about to lash out, the elderly man quickly stepped in to pin him down. The man clawed at Eddie's eyes while trying to grab the fallen weapon, but Eddie kicked him away. Eddie then got up and grappled with the man. In the chaos, gunshots rang out, and the elderly man was shot. Just to be sure, Eddie fired another shot at the man's head, watching him collapse in a pool of blood. The elderly woman was left paralyzed in shock. Now, Eddie couldn't spare her life, even if he wanted to. Shortly afterward, Eddie called his wife. Eddie mentioned he had completed his final job, earned enough money, and planned to take her away to start a beautiful new life together. The next morning, Eddie used the same method to destroy the car to cover his tracks, and headed to the airport. He first used a fake passport to check in for his flight, then went to an internet cafe to collect his final payment. Since the payment was a staggering $80 million, he feared the longer the delay, the higher the risk. Relieved of his burdens, he eagerly flew back to Spain that same night. When he exited the airport, he carried no luggage, as the sniper rifle that had accompanied him for years was left forever on the airport conveyor belt. This time, he was determined to turn over a new leaf and return to family life. Yet, while dreams are grand, reality is often disappointing. By then, the female employer who had been coordinating with Eddie contacted the ultimate client to arrange the payment. However, she was merely a middle woman serving business tycoons. After confirming the target was eliminated, the cunning group not only refused to pay Eddie's final payment, but also didn't intend to pay the middle woman her commission. They instructed the secretary to monitor her, then sent assassins to take her out. Sensing malintent from her clients, she discreetly observed the situation from the hotel lobby. When the hitman approached under the guise of delivering payment, the woman pretended to notice something wrong in her room and left the hotel. The man who just entered her room pulled out a weapon, only to find it empty. Meanwhile, elsewhere, two operatives saw Eddie's wife. Just as they were about to lose patience, a taxi suddenly appeared. However, it wasn't Eddie, it was his wife and child getting into a cab. When the subordinate asked if they should follow, the operative decisively ordered no, saying the woman was fleeing rather than heading someplace safe. Shortly after the wife left, Eddie returned home in his car. Watching Eddie walk inside, the two operatives sneaked into the yard. Inside the house, Eddie found neither his wife nor child, but instead saw that the safe contained only a small amount of money. By this time, the two operatives had climbed over the wall and were preparing to corner Eddie inside. Unexpectedly, they collided with his brother-in-law just as they entered the house. The sound of gunfire immediately alerted Eddie. He swiftly cut the power, shut the hidden door, and observed every move outside from the secret room. The operative never anticipated Eddie's sharpness. This was the closest the two had ever been. A fateful face-to-face moment, although it was through a barrier, one that would also be their last. A few seconds later, the operative turned and left the room, but Eddie kept a watchful eye on her persistent and watchful presence. When the operative returned downstairs, he immediately launched an attack. Sadly, her partner took a bullet to shield her at the cost of his life. In a fit of rage, she grabbed her rifle and unleashed a wild burst of gunfire. Only after emptying an entire clip did she realize Eddie was no longer upstairs. Now the silent house was filled only with her heavy breathing, each of her careful steps echoing in the stillness. Tightly wound with tension, she carefully muttered to herself, desperately trying to lure the prey hiding in the shadows. Taking advantage of his familiarity with the house, Eddie circled around. When the operative realized this, it was too late. She was shot. Her body collapsed to the ground. The two people who knew Eddie the best were no more. After handling the crisis, Eddie called his wife's phone, but she threw her phone into a trash can. Eddie was enraged and gritted his teeth. For more interesting recaps like this, like the video and subscribe. There's a lot more coming.